The BRICS alliance is a group of countries that traditionally works together on everything from political to economic to even occasionally military objectives. The only problem is that many of these objectives go contrary to the goals of the United States and other Western countries. To make matters worse, the BRICS alliance has many countries that are eager, ready, and willing to join this alliance. In today's video, we're talking about why that's such a huge deal and why the timing of this series of events is so important. Hey everyone, and welcome back. This is the Part-Time Economist, and in today's video, we are talking about why this massive influx of countries wanting to join the BRICS alliance is such a huge deal. But if you've never heard of the BRICS alliance, we've got to take a step back and just go over some very basic history. The BRICS alliance is a group of countries, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, that sometimes work together and coordinate when it comes to economics, military, political objectives. Now, you'll notice a couple things, that this sounds a lot like the G7 or NATO or maybe even the EU. But, as you will also notice, none of these countries are in the EU. None of these countries are in NATO, and therein lies the main issue with BRICS. BRICS in general is seen kind of as a counterbalance or a counterweight to some of these international organizations that have been set up under the Western sphere of influence. And throughout this video, when I talk about the West, I'm referring to the EU, the US, UK, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, right? Kind of the international system as we know it. And the main thing that BRICS was set up for is that many of the countries, and again, I'm not passing judgment here, they say, hey, this international system that you have set up, it's not working for us. We are getting shortchanged. So if we pool our resources, if we band together, if we coordinate among ourselves, we can either, number one, protect ourselves from this exploitative system that you've set up, or we can go a step further and we can set up our own system that advances our interests better, right? And again, I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm saying that's kind of the general theory behind BRICS, right? We can coordinate, we can kind of protect and advance our own interests. So, if you know nothing about BRICS, generally think of it as basically a country joining BRICS says there's something with the existing system that isn't working for us, right? So that's kind of the takeaway as we start this video. Now, why are all these countries wanting to join BRICS such a big deal, and why am I making this video? BRICS has been around since 2006, so at the founding, South Africa was not a member. They later became a member, but they've been around for a while. So why are all these countries all of a sudden wanting to join? That's a key question. Not just why are the countries wanting to join, but why now, and why the specific countries that have chosen to do so. So the reason this is so important, and where I want to tie it all together, is because in my opinion, the timing of these countries wanting to join BRICS, which again, when I say BRICS, I want you to essentially think saying or stating that the existing system isn't working. So why are all these countries all of a sudden willing to go on the record and say that the existing system isn't working for them? I think it ties in with Ray Dalio's cycle theory of the rise and fall of empires. For those of you who do not know of it, basically this says that in the beginning you've got a country with great leadership, a hard work ethic, they invest in education, they're competitive, they have a strong, vibrant culture, and they basically rise to the top, right? So if we're kind of looking at some of these historical empires, right, I think one of the examples Ray Dalio gives is kind of the post-war United States, right? They've got the reserve currency, they've got the massive military, they've got all this stuff going on. And you can think back through other empires throughout history, right? The British Empire, whatever the case may be. They've got all these things going for them. But as they get to the top, they become less productive, they overextend themselves, they start losing competitiveness, and there's wealth gaps in the society. As they begin to decline, you start to see large debts, internal conflict, money printing, weak leadership, internal conflict, right? All of these things. And I know it is an overused trope, right? To say the US is falling, the death of the dollar, all of this stuff, right? But if we look at Ray Dalio's cycle theory of empires, and again, there's many theories of rise and fall of empires. This is just one of many, but I think it does at least a good job that we can still use it for our analysis. If we look at this, we can see a lot of these things happening with the West, right? So when we look at becoming less productive and not investing in education, you can just take a look at how terrible the US scores when it comes to math and science scores, right? When it comes to the wealth gap, again, I'm not trying to be Republican or Democrat, but whether or not there is a wealth gap, there is a perceived wealth gap that causes social discohesion, right? You have the protests, you've got the Occupy movement, you've got all of these things, right? And then as we get more into the decline, you're looking at large debts, right? The US has what, $31 trillion in debt? And not just do we have debt, it's that we can't manage this debt, right? It's one thing to be a country with large debt, but hey, we'll get to it, we'll pay it off when we feel like it, right? It's another thing to be a country that every year your government is shutting down. Every year people are wondering, hey, is the government going to pay its bills, right? It's the difference between having a debt and letting that debt cripple you, right? Having a large debt, that can still be respected on the world stage, but not being able to come together and say, yeah, we have this debt, but we don't care about it, or we have this debt and we're going to fix it, right? This kind of conflict where there's no united front on the debt, I think could be seen as a sign of weakness. Obviously, the money printing, however much percentage of the total bills in circulation, right, were printed basically as COVID relief. Loss of reserve currency. If you look at this chart here, you can see that just within a few short decades, the share of US dollars as a reserve currency has declined. It's still pretty substantial, right? So again, I'm not one of these people saying death of the dollar, America is doomed. The influence is declining, right? So if we kind of look at the zenith of American power, right? Everyone had to fall in line. No one could question America, or by that extension, kind of the Western systems that had been set up. We're not at that point anymore, right? The power that the U.S. can wield has declined, right? Look at some of, even on a military level, right? We still have an amazing, strong military, but some of these things people are looking at and they're questioning, like, hey, is this really the big military we should be scared of anymore? They spent 20 years in Afghanistan and they still lost, right? If we look towards the war in Ukraine, right? They told us, like, basically when the war started, like, oh, Putin's already lost, right? He's done. It's going to be over with. And then a year later, they're still running basically the exact same headlines, right? And again, I'm not passing judgment on the war in Ukraine. I'm saying that this idea that the U.S. can just come in, solve the problems, we're the big boss, it's not holding up. And I think a lot of other countries are looking at that. They're looking and they're saying, hey, maybe China can come in, right? Maybe they can kind of be the power broker, the peacemaker here, right? Again, not by any stretch. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying the U.S. is doomed or anything, but I'm saying a lot of these countries, if we look at the cycle theory of rise and fall of an empire, they're looking at us and they're saying, hey, these people, they can't even get their debt together, right? They're not productive on the world stage anymore. They're not this military juggernaut that they used to be. So the timing essentially is right for them to say, hey, we've been putting up with you and your system for so long. You are in a position of relative weakness, right? So we're going to go ahead and, we're going to make our intentions known that we're looking for something better. So if we look at these countries that have applied for membership, obviously Iran, they don't get along with the U.S. The U.S. doesn't get along with them. But some of these other ones, like Saudi Arabia, for example, right? For decades, the whole idea of the petrodollar, right? They have to transact oil in dollars, and in exchange for that, we will basically give them military equipment, right? Maybe they liked that idea, maybe they didn't, but they were kind of in line with that agenda, and now they're saying, hey, we're willing to make it known that we're considering this BRICS alliance, right? So maybe we put up with you for long enough. We don't think you are this juggernaut anymore. We feel comfortable to say, hey, we're going to join this alliance. What are you going to do about it, right? And again, not by any stretch that BRICS is as integrated as the EU or NATO or anything like that, but they're more of a statement, right? A statement that things aren't working. So even if a country doesn't outright declare hostilities towards the West, simply saying, hey, I want to be a part of BRICS, that's kind of thumbing their nose, right? They're kind of saying, hey, I'm making my intentions known. Yeah, I'm not really going to do anything about it, but this isn't working for me, right? These are countries that in the past might have said, hey, we have to fall in line because we don't really see any other viable alternatives. And even if you look at some more of these here, right, you've got Mexico, for example. That's a NAFTA trading partner, right? That's a large degree of integration with the U.S. They haven't formally applied, it looks like, but still expressing membership. These are countries that are kind of testing things out, saying, hey, is there something better? Could we cast our lots in with someone else? And again, the point that I'm trying to make here isn't that BRICS in and of itself is a bad thing, right? It's been around since 2006. Countries are always going to band together to advance their interests. But what I am saying is if we overlay the massive increase in countries that are looking to join BRICS with the issues that we generally see in the West, right? So the massive debt, the decrease in competitiveness, right? The social discohesion, right? Everything like that. In my opinion, it really overlays with this cycle theory of the rise and fall of empires. So again, not by any stretch that the US or the West is falling, but as a organization, as a country, as kind of the West in general, if they are perceived to be weaker, if they're perceived to be going into that state of decline, you see other countries kind of breaking away, right? Countries that said, hey, I was kind of okay with this, now I'm not, right? In the original article, they actually said that European countries had expressed interest in joining BRICS, which totally took me by surprise because European countries in general are very much aligned with the West. I didn't find anything, any reputable examples of European countries trying to join BRICS, but if this is true, that's even more evidence that countries are considering this realignment, right? It's one thing for a country that was kind of just complying to switch to BRICS, but it's another thing for a country that was really getting something out of the Western system to consider shifting to BRICS. So as always, these are just my complete thoughts. Not that I talked about anything financial in this video, but it's just a habit at this point, so this video is not financial advice. But I'd love to know what you have to say. Do you think I'm completely off base here, or do you think that there's something with this cycle theory of the rise and fall of empires that coincides with all of these countries finally coming out and saying, yeah, we're going to join BRICS, we're going to join an organization that says the existing system needs to change? So as always, thanks for watching the video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you next time.